No one ever really arrives at Willow Creek Ranch by accident. The twisting dirt road, flanked by shadowy pine and endless sky, feels like a final test, daring you to turn back before you see what lies beyond the next hill. But Josie Turner didn't flinch.
It's okay.
She rode the last stretch with her battered trunk tied tight on the wagon, her hands raw from travel, her heart steeled by loss and the hope that somewhere in the Colorado wilderness, she might find her new beginning. Josie was not the first widow to gamble everything on a fresh start. But as the ranch house came into view, gray and silent, standing lonely against the early spring wind, she felt the kind of fear that sits heavy in your gut. Still, she climbed down, boots sinking into the muddy ruts, and forced herself to smile as a tall, dark-haired man stepped onto the porch. Cole Barrett, owner of Willow Creek Ranch, had eyes that held too many storms. He watched Josie with a guarded wariness, the weight of grief pressed into the lines of his face. Behind him, 6 girls peered from the half-shut door, like wild colts spooked by thunder. Their dresses hung a little loose, hair unbrushed, faces wary. The oldest, Ruth, stood a step ahead, chin lifted in silent challenge. The youngest, a pale slip of a girl named Lila, clung to the doorframe with 2 small fists. Cole cleared his throat. "You must be Mrs. Turner. Appreciate you coming all this way." Josie nodded, trying to keep her voice steady. "Thank you for having me, Mr. Barrett. I hope I can be of help." He didn't offer a handshake, just nodded and stepped aside, letting her pass. Josie gathered her courage and crossed the threshold into the house. The smell of wood smoke and stale biscuits lingered in the air, and her boots echoed on bare floorboards. The kitchen was cluttered with dishes. A cold stew sat untouched on the table. The air felt thick with everything left unsaid. That night, after the sparse dinner, mostly silence, save for the clink of spoons, Josie was shown to the small room at the back of the house. She unpacked in the moonlight, hands shaking as she arranged the worn photograph of her late husband on the nightstand, tucking away her own sorrow for another day. The wind howled through the cracks in the window. Just as Josie was drifting into uneasy sleep, there came a soft shuffling at her door. She sat up, heart thumping, as it creaked open and a small figure slipped inside. It was Lila, in a threadbare nightgown, eyes big as teacups. She clambered onto the edge of Josie's bed, clutching a limp, stuffed rabbit. For a moment, she just watched Josie, her face unreadable. Finally, Lila whispered, "Are you going to be our new mama?" The words stung, like a wound Josie thought she'd left behind. She reached out, smoothing Lila's hair. "No one could ever take your mama's place, sweetheart. But I'm here now. I'll look after you as best I can." Lila considered this, eyes shining in the dim room. "Papa cries when he thinks we don't see. Bertie says mamas never come back once they're gone. Maisie doesn't talk anymore. Ruth says we don't need anyone. But I wish we did." Josie pulled the child into her arms, feeling her own pain mingling with the girls. "Maybe what we need is someone who doesn't give up so easy. I think I can do that." A sudden clatter echoed from down the hall, a window banging in the wind, perhaps, or the sound of old sorrows rattling around the empty house. Josie tucked Lila in beside her and listened to the storm build outside, the walls creaking like a ship at sea. Morning broke gray and cold, with a thick mist hugging the pastures. Josie was up before dawn, determined to prove herself useful. She scrubbed the pans, chopped potatoes, and stoked the fire until warmth began to seep into the bones of the old house. She greeted each of the girls as they emerged, shy, awkward, and untrusting. Ruth, the eldest, watched Josie with sharp suspicion. Maisie, second oldest, wouldn't meet Josie's gaze, keeping to herself like a shadow. June and Birdie hovered in the background, whispering in a language only sisters understand. Hattie, with her wild curls, trailed behind them, eyes darting. Lila stuck to Josie's side, as if she'd already made up her mind. At breakfast, Josie tried to start a conversation. "Do you girls like music? I can play a little piano if there's one hiding somewhere in this house." Ruth shrugged. "Mama played. Piano's in the parlor, but it's out of tune. Nobody touches it now." "Well," Josie replied gently, "maybe one day we can fix it up together. Music has a way of making a place feel like home." Cole entered then, stoic as ever. He nodded at Josie's efforts, but kept his distance. As he finished his coffee, he announced he'd be checking fences on the north pasture, and Ruth was to ride with him. The other girls scattered to their chores, leaving Josie alone with the echo of their footfalls. But Josie was no stranger to hard work or wounded hearts. She spent the rest of the morning sweeping, mending, and humming tunes from her old life, letting the sound drift through the halls. She opened curtains, chased dust from corners, and set a loaf of bread to rise. Slowly, the house began to breathe again. That afternoon, as the wind died down, Josie ventured outside. The land was wild and raw, mountains rising in the distance, creeks swollen with spring melt. She watched the Barrett girls move through their chores, each in their own orbit, never quite touching. She knew she couldn't fix everything in a day, or even a year. But as she waved at Lila from the porch, she caught the faintest smile. Willow Creek Ranch was a house haunted by memory and sorrow. But Josie Turner, in her quiet, stubborn way, had already planted the seeds of change, and somewhere deep in her heart, she dared to believe that this time, maybe, hope would take root. Josie Turner woke with the sunrise, determined to make the second day at Willow Creek Ranch count. The house still felt chilled and uneasy, but Josie believed that warmth wasn't just a matter of temperature. It was a matter of spirit. As she moved through the quiet kitchen, she brewed strong coffee, fried eggs with bits of ham, and baked a pan of cornbread, letting the aromas fill every corner. Slowly, the children appeared one by one, drawn by hunger and maybe a thread of curiosity about this woman who seemed to make things happen just by being there. Maisie was the first to enter, her hair a wild tangle and her eyes fixed on the floor. Josie gently asked if she liked honey on her cornbread. Maisie just nodded, taking her plate in silence, but her small smile gave Josie hope. The others followed, June and Birdie arguing quietly over whose turn it was to fetch water, Hattie sneezing into her sleeve, Ruth leading Lila by the hand. Josie watched them, recognizing the fragile alliance of children forced to fend for themselves too soon. After breakfast, Josie got to work. She opened every window she could, letting the brisk spring air sweep through the house, banishing the stale scent of old grief. She found a battered broom and set to sweeping, then rallied the girls to help. Ruth protested, arms crossed. "Mama never made us do chores together," she muttered. Josie smiled, not unkindly. "Well, I'm not your mama, but I believe when folks work together, the work gets done faster, and then we can have some fun." At first, the girls hesitated, but Josie had a way of making chores seem like a game. She made a competition out of dusting the parlor, awarding a ribbon she found in a drawer to the one who found the most lost buttons or marbles under the sofa. Bertie, with her sharp eyes, won handily and strutted around the room, laughing for the first time in ages. While sweeping out the entryway, Josie uncovered a faded horseshoe tucked behind a chest. She held it up. "Anyone know what this is for?" June answered. "Mama said it's for luck, but it never worked." Josie nailed it above the door with a flourish, declaring, "Maybe it just needed a new beginning, like the rest of us." The girls exchanged glances, unsure whether to believe, but a spark of curiosity had been lit. By mid-morning, Josie had convinced Hattie and Lila to help her with the laundry. Out in the yard, they scrubbed and rinsed until their hands were raw, but Josie kept the mood light, splashing a bit of water, telling a silly story about a runaway chicken from her old life in Missouri. Hattie giggled, accidentally dropping a shirt in the tub, and Lila shrieked as a grasshopper landed on her foot. For the first time in months, the ranch echoed with laughter. Inside, Josie tackled the daunting task of reviving the long, silent piano. She dusted each key, discovering several stuck notes and a family of spiders in the bass. Ruth lingered in the doorway, watching Josie's careful hands. "Don't bother," Ruth said quietly. "Papa says there's no music left in this house." Josie just smiled, pressing a few tentative notes. The sound was off-key, but not hopeless. "Sometimes you have to make your own music, Ruth. Want to try?" Ruth hesitated, then sat beside Josie, awkward and tense. But when Josie played a familiar hymn, one Ruth's mother used to play, Ruth's voice trembled into the song, barely a whisper, but real. Josie's heart soared. Meanwhile, Cole kept his distance, watching the transformation with silent skepticism. He came in at midday, mud on his boots, eyes scanning the livelier house with uncertainty. Josie served him lunch, a hearty stew and fresh cornbread. "The girls seem happier," he remarked gruffly, almost in surprise. Josie wiped her hands on her apron. "They need to feel useful, needed, and they need to remember how to laugh." Cole met her gaze, the trace of a smile tugging at his lips. "Maybe you're right." After lunch, the girls scattered outside. Josie noticed Maisie sitting alone beneath the old cottonwood tree, her face pensive. Josie sat beside her, not speaking at first. Finally, Maisie said, "I miss Mama. She made everything safe, even the storms." Josie put an arm around her shoulders. "No one ever stops missing someone they love, but you still have your sisters, your father, and now me. We're all here for each other." Maisie nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. A sudden commotion from the barn broke the moment. A chicken on the loose, feathers flying everywhere. Hattie and Bertie chased it in circles, laughing and shouting. Ruth, forgetting herself, whooped and joined in. Josie watched, smiling, her chest swelling with a fierce, protective love. For the first time, Willow Creek Ranch felt alive again. That evening, as dusk settled, Josie lit oil lamps and gathered everyone around the table. She encouraged each girl to share something good about their day. June, normally quiet, admitted, "I liked singing again." Bertie proudly displayed her button collection. Even Ruth offered, "I guess the stew wasn't bad." Cole sat at the end, arms folded. But he listened, and for a moment, the silence was comfortable, not heavy. When bedtime came, Lila begged Josie for a story. Josie spun a gentle tale about a brave fox who outsmarted a hungry wolf, making all the girls giggle under their quilts. Josie kissed each girl goodnight, then stood in the hallway, listening as the laughter faded into sleepy murmurs. Upstairs, in the flicker of lamplight, Josie let herself hope. She understood now that building a family took more than just filling empty rooms. It took patience, music, a little silliness, and above all, love. The Barrett girls weren't ready to call her Mama yet, but tonight, for the first time, none of them cried themselves to sleep. Outside, the stars were brighter than Josie remembered, and inside, at Willow Creek Ranch, warmth was beginning to return, slowly, surely, like spring after a long, hard winter. Evenings at Willow Creek Ranch were never predictable, but that night, the air felt heavier than usual. The sun set in a streak of orange and purple, clouds rolling in fast from the western mountains. Josie stood on the porch, watching as the wind picked up, scattering loose hay across the yard and sending the weather vane spinning. Cole was in the barn, securing the horses. The girls clustered together in the parlor, restless, casting worried glances out the window as thunder rumbled in the distance. Josie tried to keep the mood light, reading from an old storybook by lamplight, her voice calm and steady, but every crack of thunder made Lila jump, and even Ruth's tough front seemed to soften as the house shuddered with the approaching storm. Suddenly, lightning split the sky, illuminating the distant pastures. A second later, a sound like the beating of 1,000 drums echoed through the valley. The cattle were panicking. From the porch, Josie saw them surging against the fence, wild-eyed and frightened by the electric air. Cole burst through the front door, breathless. "Stampede! I need help! Now!" Ruth was already grabbing her boots. Josie turned to the girls, her heart pounding. "Stay inside. Keep the doors closed, and don't let anyone out. Maisie, come with me." Without waiting for an answer, Josie pulled on her coat and sprinted after Cole into the raging storm, Maisie close behind. The rain hit them hard, cold needles slicing through their clothes. Cole shouted directions, barely heard above the chaos. "We need to get around them. Push them back toward the east fence before they break through." Josie nodded, adrenaline driving her forward. Maisie hesitated, shivering, but Josie squeezed her hand. "We can do this. I'll be right here." They reached the edge of the herd. The cattle, crazed with fear, bellowed and stamped, hooves pounding mud into a frenzy. Cole dashed to the far side, waving his hat and yelling, trying to turn the lead steers. Josie spotted a small, terrified calf separated from the others, stuck in a tangle of barbed wire. She didn't think. She just moved. "Maisie, help me!" Josie called, fighting her way through the rain. Together, they wrestled the calf free, ignoring the sting of the wire. The animal kicked wildly, but Maisie wrapped her arms around its neck, talking in soft, desperate words. Josie lifted, pushing and pulling, until finally the calf staggered up and ran back toward the herd. Cole, drenched and mud-splattered, saw what they'd done and nodded grimly. "Good work. Now get clear." Just as Josie and Maisie scrambled back, a bolt of lightning struck a nearby tree, sending splinters flying and spooking the cattle anew. For a heart-stopping moment, the herd rushed straight for the open gate. Cole, acting on pure instinct, swung the gate shut at the last possible second, bracing his shoulder against the force of the animals as the thunder rolled. Josie and Maisie threw their weight against the other side, feet slipping in the mud, but they held. At last, the stampede slowed, the cattle finally calming as the rain eased and the storm moved on. Josie's whole body trembled, not just from cold, but from relief. Back at the house, the girls were huddled together, eyes wide with fear and awe as Josie and Maisie stumbled in, dripping wet and covered in mud. Lila ran to Josie, hugging her tightly. "I was so scared you'd get lost, like Mama did." Josie knelt, gathering all the girls close. We're safe, all of us. And it's thanks to Maisie. She was brave as a wild Mustang out there. Maisie flushed with pride. Josie saved the calf. I just did what she told me. Cole came in last, his chest heaving, eyes flickering with a mixture of exhaustion and gratitude. Couldn't have done it without you, Josie. Or you, Maisie. He looked at his daughters, voice unsteady. Your mama would have been proud tonight. For the first time, something shifted in the room. Ruth, the oldest, stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Josie and Maisie. We really are lucky you came, she whispered, her voice cracking. Later, after the girls had dried off and climbed into bed, Josie sat by the window, listening to the soft patter of rain on the roof. She felt aches in her muscles and a burning cut across her hand from the barbed wire, but her heart was light. She had proved herself, not just to Cole and the girls, but to herself. In the storm, she'd found her own strength again. The next morning, the ranch was still soaked, but the air was crisp and new. The herd grazed quietly in the mist, as if nothing had happened. Cole joined Josie on the porch, 2 steaming mugs of coffee between them. He cleared his throat. You kept your head out there. Most folks would have panicked. Thank you. Josie smiled, tucking a strand of damp hair behind her ear. We look out for each other. That's what families do, even if we're still figuring out how to be one. He nodded, a hint of something softer in his eyes. You're making this place feel like home again. Didn't think it was possible. Josie looked out across the fields, sunlight breaking through the clouds. Sometimes it takes a storm to bring everyone together. Sometimes that's how you know what you're fighting for. Inside, the girls were already giggling over breakfast, planning the day's chores. Josie knew more storms, real and otherwise, would come. But last night, they'd faced the worst of it together. For the first time since arriving at Willow Creek Ranch, Josie dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, she belonged. After the storm, the days at Willow Creek Ranch settled into a rhythm that felt almost peaceful. Josie filled each morning with the scent of fresh bread and the clatter of chores shared among the girls. Cole spent long hours in the pastures, but even he seemed less burdened, as if the wild rush of thunder and stampede had shaken something loose in him. Still, everyone at the ranch knew peace never lasted long in the high country. It was late afternoon when the first visitor arrived. A rickety wagon came bouncing up the road, trailing dust and the tuneless jangle of pots and pans. Josie was hanging laundry while Birdie and Hattie played tag in the yard. The girls stopped, watching with wide eyes as a thin man in a patched coat leapt down from the wagon. He wore a crooked smile and spoke with a snake oil salesman's flair. Well, good day to you, fine folks. Name's Silas Grigg, purveyor of trinkets and wonders. Might I interest you in a miracle cure, or perhaps a lovely ribbon for the young ladies? Before Josie could answer, Birdie blurted out, We don't have any money. Hattie tugged her braid and shook her head, but Grigg just laughed, his eyes darting to the house and barn. Josie caught the look, sharp and assessing. Josie gave him her best no-nonsense stare. We're not looking to buy, Mr. Grigg, but I can offer you a drink of water for your trouble. Oh, I wouldn't want to impose, he replied, though his feet edged closer to the porch. But if you insist. Inside, Josie kept a careful watch as Grigg accepted a tin cup of water, all the while letting his gaze roam over the furnishings, the shelf of battered plates, the coat hooks near the door. He tried to charm the girls with tales of faraway cities and magic lanterns, but Ruth saw through him. She hovered protectively, arms crossed, suspicion written plain on her face. As Grigg finished his drink, he pulled a small velvet pouch from his coat. "Perhaps a game of chance?" he said, jingling the pouch. "Double your coin? Simple as pie. What do you say?" "Miss." He winked at Ruth, but Josie stepped in. "No gambling in this house, Mr. Grigg," Josie said, her voice calm but firm. "And I think it's best you move along before the sun sets." Grigg's smile faltered, just for a second. "A shame. Folks around here used to be friendlier." "We're friendly to honest folks," Josie replied. She held the door open, her message clear. Grigg tipped his hat, but as he left, Josie noticed the small silver spoon missing from the table. Quick as a flash, she caught up to him outside. "You forgot something," she said, holding out her hand. He tried to play innocent, but her look was steady. Finally, he dropped the spoon into her palm. "Just a keepsake, miss. No harm meant." "Goodbye, Mr. Grigg," Josie said, and watched until the wagon disappeared down the road. That evening, as Josie recounted the story to Cole, he shook his head. "There's always someone looking to take what little we have. You handled him well?" Josie shrugged. "I've met his kind before. Desperate people do desperate things." But there was little time for reflection. The next day, neighbor Hank Drummond rode up the lane, dust swirling behind his chestnut horse. Hank was broad-shouldered, with a thick mustache and the air of a man who never took no for an answer. He greeted Cole and Josie with exaggerated warmth, but his eyes were cold and calculating. "Heard about the stampede," Hank said, tying his horse to the rail. "Lucky you folks didn't lose half your herd." He glanced at the girls, who stood clustered together, then back at Cole. "Truth is, running a ranch out here's no easy feat, especially with so many mouths to feed. You ever think about selling, Cole?" Cole's jaw tightened. "This land's not for sale." Hank grinned. "Never hurts to talk. Lot of folks are going under. I've got the means to take Willow Creek off your hands before the bank comes calling." His tone was smooth, but the threat was there. Slick as oil, Josie stepped forward, voice clear. "We're managing just fine. The Barretts don't give up easy." Hank looked her up and down, as if seeing Josie for the first time. "And who might you be?" "She's with us now," Ruth answered before Josie could speak. "She saved our ranch during the storm." Hank's eyes narrowed. "Well, I suppose every ranch could use a miracle worker. But miracles don't pay debts." He tipped his hat, then added, "I'll be around, in case you change your mind." When Hank finally left, the tension lingered like a thundercloud. Josie saw the worry in Cole's face, the fear he tried to hide from the girls. That night, after supper, Josie gathered the sisters in the kitchen. "We may not have much," she told them, "but we have each other, and I believe that's enough to stand up to men like Hank Drummond." Ruth stood tall. "We won't let him take our home." Bertie piped up, "What if the bank comes?" Josie squeezed her hand. "We'll find a way. We always do." Inspired by Josie's courage, the girls set to work over the next days. Ruth and Maisie made lists of chores and things they could sell at market. June and Hattie collected wildflowers to dry and press. Even Lila pitched in, feeding the chickens and fetching eggs. The house buzzed with purpose. For the first time, Josie felt not just like an outsider trying to help, but truly a part of their fight. Each small victory, a patch sown, a pie baked, a day's work finished, brought them closer together. As dusk fell and the fields turned gold, Josie watched the Barrett sisters laughing on the porch, the worries of the world held at bay, if only for a little while. The threat of Hank Drummond loomed, but together, the family was stronger than any storm. And as the oil lamps flickered to life, Josie knew she'd found something she never expected on the lonely road to Willow Creek, a place where hope, courage, and love could grow, no matter what the world threw at them. For a few brief weeks, hope settled quietly over Willow Creek Ranch. The girls, once as wary as wild deer, now moved through their days with a sense of purpose. Chores became routines, music floated through the house, and the memory of old sorrows began to soften around the edges. But as the warmth of late spring settled in, so did a new kind of unease, a shadow that crept in with the arrival of a letter marked with the seal of the local bank. Cole found Josie out by the garden, teaching Lila and Hattie how to plant beans in careful rows. He approached with the letter in hand, his face grim. "It's from the bank," he said quietly, handing it to her. Josie wiped her hands on her skirt and took the letter, reading aloud as the girls gathered close. "Regret to inform you that past due debts remain unresolved, unless full payment is made within 60 days. The property known as Willow Creek Ranch will be forfeit." Josie felt the world sway beneath her feet. The girls stared at Cole, faces pale. Ruth was the first to speak. "Are they going to take our home?" Cole tried to steady his voice. "Not if I can help it. But we're going to need every hand, every bit of grit we've got." That evening, as a hush fell over the kitchen, Ruth and Maisie slipped away to the porch. Josie found them whispering, heads bowed over a scrap of paper. "We have to do something," Ruth said fiercely. "Papa's done everything he can. It's our turn." Maisie nodded, eyes shining with resolve. "I heard they're holding a bake sale in town for the Founders' Day festival. Maybe if we make enough pies and bread, we can sell them. Every penny counts, right?" Josie smiled, pride and sorrow mingling in her chest. "That's a fine idea, girls. I'll help you. And I heard there's a horse race at the festival, too. Winner takes home a big purse." "Maisie, didn't you say you were the fastest rider in all of Willow Creek?" Maisie blushed, but nodded. "I can ride Daisy better than anyone." "Then let's make a plan," Josie said. "We'll work together, Barrett style." Over the next week, the house turned into a whirlwind of preparation. Ruth and Maisie worked side by side with Josie in the kitchen, their hands dusted with flour from dawn until dusk. June and Bertie gathered wild berries and nuts, while Hattie and Lila folded paper napkins and polished jars for preserves. The girls squabbled and laughed, their nervous energy barely contained. Cole did his part, repairing fences and driving the wagon into town to buy supplies. But Josie saw the worry etched deeper into his brow each night. More than once, she found him sitting alone on the porch, staring at the horizon as if searching for answers in the twilight. The day of the festival dawned bright and clear. The family loaded their wagon with pies, bread, jams, and wildflower bouquets. The girls wore their best dresses, their hair braided and tied with ribbons Josie had found at the bottom of an old trunk. Even Cole cleaned up, donning a fresh shirt and a forced smile. The town square was alive with music and laughter, stalls lining the street, children running underfoot. Josie arranged the baked goods with Ruth and Maisie, while Cole signed up Maisie and Daisy, their scrappy, unbroken pony, for the race. As the girls took turns selling their wares, Josie noticed Hank Drummond standing nearby, watching with that same cold interest as before. He tipped his hat when Josie caught his eye. Looks like you're pulling out all the stops, Mrs. Turner. Shame it won't be enough. That ranch is a lot of trouble for a woman alone. Josie met his gaze, steel in her voice. We're not alone, Mr. Drummond, and we're not giving up. Hank laughed, turning away. We'll see. When the time came for the race, Maisie was shaking. Josie knelt beside her, checking Daisy's bridle. You can do this, Maisie. Just remember, it's not about being the fastest. It's about not giving up, no matter what. Maisie nodded, determination settling over her features. Ruth squeezed her hand. For Mama, for the ranch. The starting bell rang. Daisy took off like a shot. Maisie crouched low over her neck. The competition was fierce. Wealthy ranchers on sleek, well-trained horses. Town boys with something to prove. Daisy fell behind at first, spooked by the noise and crowd. Josie's heart thudded as she watched, her fists clenched. Halfway through, Daisy stumbled in a muddy patch. Maisie almost lost her seat, but she hung on, urging the pony forward. Come on, girl, we can do this. Don't quit on me now. The crowd roared as Daisy found her stride, surging forward. One by one, they overtook the others, first third place, then second. The finish line was a blur of color and noise. In the last seconds, Daisy and Maisie pushed past the lead rider, winning by a nose. The Barretts exploded in cheers, running to hug Maisie as she slid from the saddle, breathless and triumphant. Cole swept Maisie up in a hug, his eyes shining. You did it, Pumpkin. You saved the day. With the prize money and the profits from the bake sale, they returned home, pockets fuller and hearts lighter. It wasn't enough to pay all the debts, but it was a start, a sign that maybe, just maybe, they could find a way through. That night, Josie gathered everyone around the table. You girls are the bravest, most determined family I've ever known. No matter what comes next, we stand together. For the first time in a long while, there was laughter at Willow Creek Ranch. Real, honest laughter, echoing across the fields as the sun set in a blaze of hope. Winter arrived at Willow Creek Ranch with a fury none of them had expected. By late November, snow drifted in high banks against the fence posts, the wind howling so fiercely some nights it sounded like lost souls crying across the prairie. The girls took to their chores, bundled in every scarf and mitten Josie could find, cheeks red, eyes watering from the cold. Even inside, the old stove in the parlor struggled to keep the chill at bay, and Josie found herself burning through the woodpile faster than Cole liked. It was during the bleakest stretch, when the sun vanished behind thick pewter clouds and hope itself seemed to hibernate, that sickness struck. It started with Lila. One morning, she didn't rise with the others. Her tiny frame curled tight under the quilt, hair damp with fever. Josie knelt beside her, worry spiking through her chest as she brushed sweat from the little girl's brow. I'm so cold, Josie, Lila whispered, lips cracked, voice barely audible. Josie tucked the quilt tighter and pressed her own hand to Lila's cheek. You just rest, sweetheart. I'm right here. But by noon, Bertie was coughing too, her face flushed, her breathing shallow. The illness moved quick as wildfire. Headaches, chills, a deep ache in the bones that made even Bertie, the wildest of the sisters, go quiet. Cole looked stricken, pacing the hallway, running his hands through his hair. This can't be happening. Not now. I lost Mary to fever. Josie, I can't lose the girls, too. Josie met his eyes. We're not going to lose anyone. I'll stay with them. Can you fetch the doctor in town? Cole didn't argue, only grabbed his coat and strode out into the blizzard. The day stretched endlessly. the sound of coughing filling the house. Josie moving from bed to bed with cold compresses, honey tea, and whispered comfort. She read aloud softly, stories of warm places and braver days, fighting the sense of helplessness that threatened to swallow her. Ruth and Maisie tried to help, but fear gnawed at them. "What if they get worse?" Maisie asked, wringing her hands as Josie mixed another cup of willow bark tea. Josie knelt to meet her eyes. "You two are the strongest girls I know. I need you to keep the fire going and make sure the others eat something. Can you do that for me?" Maisie nodded, swallowing her tears. Night came with no sign of Cole or the doctor. Josie stayed awake, counting Bertie's breaths, singing softly to Lila as snow tapped the window pane. At one point, Bertie's fever soared, her body shaking so hard Josie feared she'd lose her. She sponged her face, holding her close, whispering prayers she hadn't spoken since her own husband passed. "You're safe, Bertie. I won't let you go." As dawn crept pale and cold over the horizon, Cole burst through the door with Dr. Simmons in tow. The doctor, a gruff, gray-haired man, examined the girls quickly, murmuring about fever and infection. He gave Josie bottles of medicine and instructions to keep the girls warm, urging fluids and rest. "It's a bad strain, but you're doing everything right. Don't give up." The next days blurred together. Josie caught snatches of sleep between tending to the sick, checking fevers, coaxing spoonfuls of broth and medicine past cracked lips. Ruth and Hattie brought in wood and heated bricks to warm the beds. Maisie wiped sweaty foreheads and whispered encouragement. Even Cole, usually so stoic, sat at Lila's side, reading her favorite story over and over. One night, Bertie's fever finally broke. She opened her eyes, weak but smiling, and Josie nearly wept with relief. "You did it, Bertie. You fought so hard." Lila soon followed, her cough fading, her small hand clutching Josie's sleeve as she drifted into healing sleep. By the end of the week, the house was filled with sunlight again. The storm finally broken. The girls, gaunt and pale but smiling, gathered in the parlor, wrapped in blankets. Cole made a rare joke about their scarecrow faces, drawing a chorus of weak laughter. As Josie passed out mugs of warm milk, Ruth caught her hand. "You stayed up all night for us. You never left, not even once." Josie squeezed her hand, overcome with emotion. "That's what family does, Ruth. I'd do it 100 times over." For a long moment, Ruth just looked at her, eyes shining. Then, softly, she said, "Mama, Josie, you feel like a mama now, to all of us." The words settled over Josie like the warmest quilt. Hattie nodded, adding, "You're our mama now. That's how I feel." Josie could barely speak, her throat thick. "Thank you, girls. That means more than anything in this world." Cole, listening from the doorway, caught Josie's eye and gave her a nod, more grateful, more open than ever before. The barrier between them, built from years of sorrow and fear, finally began to crumble. That night, as the family shared a simple supper, Bertie and Lila leaned against Josie's sides, and Ruth and Hattie each called her Mama without a second thought. The word rang through the house like a bell, bright and clear. Outside, the last of the snow melted on the roof, and the sky, for the first time in weeks, was deep and blue. Josie knew there would be more hardships ahead, but in that moment, surrounded by laughter, she realized she'd truly become a part of this wild, resilient family, and Willow Creek Ranch, battered and scarred, was home. Spring at Willow Creek Ranch brought muddy boots, calf births, and a sky that could turn from blue to storm black in a heartbeat. But for the Barrett family, the season also brought something far more threatening than wild weather. Rumors were swirling in town. Hank Drummond was on the move again, and this time, he wasn't just whispering offers or dropping hints at church socials. He had the law on his side. It started innocently enough. One morning, Josie was rolling out dough for breakfast biscuits when a pair of unfamiliar men rode up to the house. Their badges gleamed in the morning light, but their faces showed no kindness. Cole met them on the porch, jaw tight, arms crossed. "Cole Barrett?" the taller of the two called out. "I'm Sheriff McKee. This here's Deputy Lane. We're here on behalf of the county and Mr. Hank Drummond." Josie paused, flour-dusted hands frozen in midair. The girls hovered in the hallway, listening hard, worry etched on every face. Cole answered, "I know who you are. What's your business here?" The sheriff drew a folded document from his coat. "There's a claim against your property. Seems the title's in dispute. Mr. Drummond's petitioned the court. If you can't prove the land is rightfully yours, he aims to buy it out from under you." Josie felt a rush of panic. She saw it mirrored in Ruth's clenched fists, Maisie's wide eyes. Cole's voice was flat and dangerous. "This is my wife's land. Been in her family generations. I have the deed." The sheriff shook his head. "We'll need to see that. And anything else proves your claim. If you can't, you'll have 30 days to clear out." After they left, Cole slammed his fist against the porch post so hard the wood splintered. "That snake. He's waited till I'm down to my last dime. He'll take everything if he can." Josie moved quickly, gathering the girls around the table. "Listen to me. We've faced worse than Hank Drummond. There's got to be something, some record or letter, that proves this land belongs to you." The girls scattered to search every nook and cranny. Ruth combed through old trunks. Maisie rifled through boxes of yellowed papers in the attic. Bertie and June upended every drawer and chest in the parlor. Hattie and Lila sorted through a battered wooden box filled with their mother's keepsakes. Dried flowers, faded ribbons, and bundles of letters tied with twine. By evening, the table was stacked high with documents. Cole sifted through deeds, tax receipts, and maps, but nothing seemed clear enough to satisfy a judge or to stand up to Drummond's lawyers. Frustration and fear threatened to overwhelm them all. Josie sat beside the girls, flipping through the last bundle of letters. One envelope, sealed with a bit of blue wax, caught her eye. It was addressed to "My dearest Cole," in the elegant looping hand of his late wife, Martha. Josie's hands trembled as she broke the seal and read aloud. The letter was dated the day before Martha passed. In it, she wrote about her love for Cole and their daughters. But more importantly, she mentioned the original deed to the ranch and a copy she'd placed in her father's Bible. A family heirloom that hadn't been opened in years. "Papa's Bible!" Ruth exclaimed. "It's in the old trunk in the cellar!" With everyone scrambling, Ruth and Josie descended into the cool, musty cellar. They unearthed the heavy trunk, brushing away cobwebs. Inside, tucked between pages of the ancient Bible, was a folded yellowed sheet. The original deed to Willow Creek Ranch, with every signature, date, and notary stamp intact. Josie's relief was so powerful she had to sit down. Ruth hugged her fiercely, whispering, "You saved us, Josie." "You really did." The next morning, Cole and Josie rode into town. The courthouse was buzzing. Drummond and his lawyer were already there, smug and confident. But when Cole presented the deed and Martha's letter, The judge needed only a glance to declare the Barretts the rightful owners. Hank Drummond's face twisted in disbelief and rage, but the law was clear. He stormed out, muttering, "You haven't seen the last of me." When Cole and Josie returned, the girls met them at the gate, holding hands, breathless with hope. Josie waved the deed overhead like a victory flag. Ruth shouted, "We get to stay! Willow Creek is ours!" Cole gathered the girls and Josie in a circle, his voice trembling. "I couldn't have done it without you, all of you. And Josie, you're the heart of this family now." Tears sparkled in Josie's eyes as the girls hugged her tight, their joy echoing across the ranch. That evening, they lit every lamp, made a feast of beans and biscuits, and sang together, laughter spilling out through the windows and into the warm night air. Later, as the girls drifted to bed, Josie lingered on the porch with Cole. The moon hung low over the fields. Cole reached for her hand. "I never thought I'd find hope here again. You gave it back to us." Josie squeezed his hand. "We gave it to each other." Inside, the Barrett family slept in peace, the shadows of fear finally banished. Willow Creek Ranch was safe for now, its halls ringing with the promise of new beginnings. Spring had settled across Willow Creek Ranch, and with it came a feeling of hard-won peace. The fields were alive with green shoots, wildflowers crept up along the fence lines, and laughter filled the evenings as the family mended broken things and planned for brighter days. But as every rancher knows, the wild country always keeps its own secrets, and trouble can stalk even the safest home. It started with the animals. One morning, Hattie found a trail of chicken feathers in the yard, leading toward the creek. A day later, June spotted claw marks gouged into the barn door. At first, Cole thought it was a fox or a stray coyote, but Josie saw the worry behind his eyes. She made sure the children stayed close to the house after supper and checked the windows twice each night before bed. Then came the howl, a deep, bone-shaking cry in the black of midnight that sent a shiver through every soul in the house. Lila woke screaming. Bertie buried her head under the covers, and Ruth clutched Josie's arm. Her bravado vanished. The next morning, Cole found fresh tracks by the cattle pen. He crouched, studying the wide paw prints in the soft mud. "Mountain lion," he said grimly, showing Josie the size with his palm. "Big one, and hungry." Josie's stomach knotted. "What do we do?" "Keep the kids inside after dark," Cole replied. "I'll sleep in the barn with the rifle. It'll move on when it doesn't find what it wants." But that evening, the lion returned. The horses kicked and snorted in their stalls, and the cattle crowded at the far end of the pasture, noses up, eyes wild. Josie sat awake, listening for any sound, her heart racing at every creak. But the worst came just before dawn, when Maisie shook Josie awake, eyes wide with terror. "I heard it. Something's in the chicken coop." Without hesitation, Josie threw on her coat and boots. "Stay with the others," she whispered, but Maisie shook her head, refusing to leave Josie's side. Together, they crept out into the frosty darkness, lantern in hand. A low growl echoed from the far side of the barn. In the flickering light, Josie saw the mountain lion, a tawny, muscular shadow crouched over a struggling hen. Its eyes caught the lantern's beam and flashed green, its lips curling back from sharp, yellow teeth. Maisie gasped, but Josie stood firm, her mind racing. She knew a gunshot might spook the cattle and risk hurting someone. Instead, she grabbed a length of chain from the barn wall, swinging it over her head, and shouted with all the strength she could muster. "Get away! Get out of here! Maisie joined in, her voice high and fierce. They banged the lantern against a tin bucket, the noise echoing across the yard. The lion froze, muscles rippling, then snarled and took a step forward. Josie's heart hammered, but she refused to back down. You leave our home! Go on, get! For a terrifying moment, it seemed the animal might charge. Then, with a final snarl, the mountain lion spun and loped away, vanishing into the tall grass at the edge of the woods. Josie let out a shaky breath, slumping against the barn wall as Maisie hugged her tight. When Cole arrived, rifle in hand, Josie explained what had happened. He stared at her, a mix of awe and fear in his eyes. You're braver than most men I know, Josie. You too, Maisie. The children rushed out to see the aftermath. Ruth lifted Maisie onto her shoulders, cheering. You two saved the day. Even Hattie, normally quick to tease, beamed with pride. But in the chaos, Josie realized something was missing. A thin gold ring she always wore on a chain around her neck. Her wedding band, the last keepsake from her life before Willow Creek, was gone. She searched the barn and the yard, sifting through hay and mud, but it had vanished, lost in the struggle with the lion. That evening, as the family gathered around the supper table, Josie was quieter than usual. Lila noticed, tugging at her sleeve. What's wrong, Mama? Josie forced a smile. I lost my ring, honey. It was very special to me. Ruth reached across the table, taking Josie's hand. You've given us more than any ring, Josie. You gave us a family again. Maisie nodded. That mountain lion could have hurt any of us. You saved us. You're the bravest person I know. The loss of her ring felt sharp, but as Josie looked around the table, at Cole's gentle eyes, the girls' shining faces, the laughter bubbling up even after so much fear, she felt a wave of peace. Maybe the ring was meant to be left behind. Maybe letting go of her old life was the final step in truly becoming a Barrett. Later, she and Cole stood beneath the stars, the night silent at last. Cole wrapped his arm around her shoulders. I saw what you did today. I hope you know how much you mean to us. To me. Josie leaned into him, feeling the truth settle in her bones. We're stronger together. As long as we have each other, nothing out there can take away what matters most. The wild, dangerous world would always be just beyond the fence line. But inside Willow Creek Ranch, love and courage stood guard, making it a home where anything was possible. The rains of late spring were heavy that year. They drummed against the roof, turned the dirt lanes to thick brown rivers, and filled the pastures with the sweet, green scent of new life. For the first time in many seasons, Willow Creek Ranch felt like it was waking up. Yet none of the family could have predicted the new life about to find them, washed up by the swollen creek. It happened one stormy morning. Josie was gathering eggs in the henhouse when Birdie came running, panting. Josie, come quick. The creek's over the bank. Together they dashed out, splashing through ankle-deep puddles to the old bridge, where the water now surged and foamed, threatening to sweep away anything in its path. As Josie scanned the churning creek, she spotted something, someone, caught in a tangle of willow branches near the far shore. A flash of red shirt, a pale hand waving weakly above the water. Help! The cry was faint, almost drowned out by the roar of the flood. Josie's heart leapt. Without thinking, she tossed her apron aside and waded in, the freezing water tugging at her skirts. Ruth ran for Cole, who came pelting from the barn, rope in hand. Together they formed a chain, Cole bracing his boots on a tree root, Josie pushing through the biting current. Finally, she reached the boy, thin, shivering, maybe 10 years old, clinging to the willow for dear life. "You're safe now," Josie gasped, hauling him in as Cole pulled the rope, dragging them both back to shore. Maisie and June wrapped the boy in blankets and hurried him inside, where the warmth of the kitchen soon thawed his frozen limbs and spirit. He was a runaway, they learned. His name was Eli. His mother had died last winter, and he'd been shuttled from distant relatives to a cruel, uncaring uncle, until finally he'd fled, following the train tracks west. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," Eli whispered, eyes wide with fear and hunger. I just wanted some place to belong." Josie's heart cracked open at his words. The girls, especially Lila and Hattie, immediately took to him, fussing over his bruises and fetching him bread and milk. Even Ruth, who took pride in being tough, softened when Eli shyly asked if he could help feed the chickens. Cole sat at the table, silent, considering, but Josie saw the decision written in his eyes. "You're safe here, Eli," Cole finally said. "No one's going to send you away." That day, the Barrett house buzzed with a new energy. Eli was eager to work, determined to prove he could pull his weight. He mended fences with Cole, learned to chop wood with Maisie, and even let June teach him to braid rope, though he fumbled it at first. At supper, he said grace in a trembling voice, and the girls all squeezed his hand in welcome. The ranch seemed to blossom with Eli's arrival. For the first time, the children's laughter rang louder than the wind, and even the old piano in the parlor found its voice again. Ruth tuned it with Josie's help, and soon the evenings filled with music. Josie playing gentle waltzes while the children sang, their voices carrying out across the moonlit fields. As the weeks passed, word of Eli's rescue spread through the valley. At first, some in town whispered that the Barretts were taking on more than they could manage, but Josie just smiled and invited everyone to the ranch's first harvest festival in years. "Come see what a little hope can do," she told them. Preparations for the festival turned the ranch into a whirlwind of activity. The girls baked pies and biscuits, June gathered wildflowers, and Eli, now robust and tanned from the sun, built wooden signs with Cole. Lila practiced a song to sing for the guests, her sweet voice echoing through the house. When the day of the festival finally arrived, neighbors from miles around came streaming up the lane. Tables groaned under platters of food. Children chased each other through the hayfields, and even old rival Hank Drummond arrived, hat in hand, keeping to himself. No one dared spoil the mood. Josie moved through the crowd, laughing and greeting everyone, her eyes shining with pride. As evening fell and lanterns glowed beneath the trees, Cole approached her with a nervous, boyish smile. He offered his hand, and together they shared their first dance, the children clapping and whooping in delight. In that moment, Josie realized how much she'd changed, how the old wounds had been transformed by kindness, courage, and sheer, stubborn love. She glanced at the children, Ruth leading a circle dance, Maisie and Birdie showing Eli how to waltz, June helping Hattie with a stubborn knot. Lila perched on a hay bale, giggling. The family she'd feared she might never find was right there, alive and overflowing with possibility. Later, as the stars glittered above the ranch and the guests departed, Josie and Cole sat on the porch, Eli asleep against Josie's shoulder. Cole's hand found hers. "You gave us all a second chance," he said quietly. "And you saved more than the ranch. You saved all of us." Josie leaned her head against his arm. "We saved each other." Inside, the house glowed with the light of family, new and old, each one rescued, each one restored. For the first time, Willow Creek Ranch was more than just a place to live. It was a true home, a beacon for any lost soul who might find their way to its door. Christmas arrived at Willow Creek Ranch on a morning dusted with new snow. The world outside sparkled white and silent, a hush settling over the fields and pines. Inside, the warmth of the kitchen rose in a swirl of cinnamon and wood smoke. Laughter echoing through every hallway. It was the first Christmas in years that didn't feel empty or haunted by loss, and Josie could hardly believe how far they'd come. The children were up before dawn, clattering down the stairs in nightgowns and boots, breath puffing in the cold. Eli tried to sneak a peek at the presents stacked beneath the ragged cedar tree, each one carefully wrapped in newspaper and tied with scraps of ribbon. Josie caught him and winked, pressing a mug of cocoa into his hands. "Patience, mister. Magic takes time." Cole, still groggy, rubbed his eyes as he entered the parlor. He watched the children gather around Josie, their faces glowing in the firelight, and felt something in his chest unclench. This was the family he'd thought lost forever. Breakfast was a joyous feast. The girls sang carols between mouthfuls, Eli recited a poem he'd written, and even Cole joined in on a rousing chorus of jingle bells. Afterward, Josie called everyone into the parlor for gifts. There were simple things: a knitted scarf from Hattie for Ruth, a carved wooden horse from Eli to Maisie, a hand-stitched handkerchief from Bertie to Josie. But each gift was given with love and received with tears and laughter. After the last ribbon was unwrapped, Cole stood, clearing his throat. He reached into his pocket, his hands shaking slightly, and crossed the room to Josie. The children fell silent, eyes wide. Cole knelt before her, holding out a small velvet box. "Josie Turner, you came to this ranch when we were lost, when the light had gone out of our lives. You made us a family again. Will you marry me and stay by my side for all the days to come?" Josie's eyes brimmed with tears, her heart racing. She nodded, unable to speak, and Cole slipped the ring, his late wife's, polished and resized, onto her finger. The children erupted in cheers, swarming Josie and Cole with hugs and laughter. The rest of the day passed in a whirl of joy. Word of the proposal traveled quickly, and neighbors from across the valley stopped by with well wishes and homemade pies. Josie felt overwhelmed by the love pouring into their home, each visitor proof that the ranch was more than just a patch of land. It was a place where hope lived, where anyone could start over. That night, after the excitement faded, Josie and Cole sat quietly by the fire, their hands entwined. The children, now her children, were sprawled around the hearth, drifting to sleep. The old sign above the mantel caught the firelight, "Where hearts are mended and families begin again." Josie traced the words with her eyes, her heart swelling with gratitude. The years that followed only deepened that sense of belonging. Willow Creek Ranch became a haven for anyone in need. Lost or abandoned children found their way to its doors, each one welcomed without question. Some stayed for a season, some forever. Josie and Cole never turned anyone away. The house changed and grew. Cole built new rooms and a bunkhouse. Ruth and Maisie took on more responsibility, teaching the younger children how to ride, mend fences, and plant a garden. Eli flourished, growing tall and strong, eager to help every newcomer find their place. The kitchen table stretched to hold a dozen, then more, each meal a celebration of survival, forgiveness, and new beginnings. One autumn, a runaway girl named Molly arrived, clutching nothing but a scrap of Josie's old handkerchief she'd found in town. Josie wrapped her in a warm shawl and said, You're safe now, honey. This is your home. It became a story the children would tell for years, how kindness had a way of circling back, how love grew every time it was given away. Through all the seasons, Josie and Cole stood side by side. They faced more storms, more loss and triumph. Some days were hard. The world outside didn't always make sense, and grief could still find its way through any door. But Willow Creek stood strong, a place where hearts could be healed. Every Christmas, the whole family, now bursting with children, adopted and born, neighbors and friends, gathered for a feast. They'd sing, "Remember the Old Days," and tell newcomers how it all began with a stranger on a lonely road and a ranch that needed hope. Cole would tap the sign above the mantel and wink, and Josie would hug the children close, marveling at the life they'd built. And so the legend of Willow Creek Ranch grew. Folks came from far and wide, not just to see the land or the animals, but to feel the spirit of something rare, a family built on courage, forgiveness, and fierce, ordinary love. In the end, it wasn't the hardships that defined them, but the way they met each new challenge, together. One snowy night, Josie watched the children, her children, dancing in the firelight. Cole's arm around her shoulders, laughter rising above the wind. She knew that every sorrow, every loss, had led her to this moment. Here, in this house, every broken thing had been mended. Every heart had found its home. Willow Creek Ranch was no longer just a place on a map. It was a promise, a beacon for anyone lost in the storm. And above the hearth, that wooden sign glowed, a testament to all who entered, where hearts are mended and families begin again. After the heartbreak of losing her husband, Josie Turner arrives at Willow Creek Ranch in search of a new beginning. Hired by widower Cole Barrett to help raise his 6 daughters, Josie finds a family torn apart by grief and hardship. Through seasons of storms, financial struggle, illness, and outside threats, Josie's compassion and determination begin to heal old wounds. Alongside the Barretts, she faces wild animals, dishonest neighbors, and the looming loss of their beloved ranch. But by uniting in hope and love, Josie and the family transform Willow Creek into a sanctuary, a place where lost souls, like runaway Eli, can find a true home. In the end, Josie's courage and the family's unbreakable bond bring lasting joy, making the ranch a beacon of healing and second chances for all. True family isn't defined by blood, but by the love, kindness, and courage we show in the hardest times. Even when life seems impossible, hope grows through simple acts of care and the willingness to stand together. The journey may be tough, but a loving heart can mend even the deepest wounds and create a home where anyone can belong. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and follow our channel for more inspiring stories of hope, resilience, and the power of family. Leave a comment with your favorite moment or the lesson you took away. Your thoughts help us bring more uplifting tales to you and others in need of encouragement.